Hello and welcome to Curly Brace, a podcast about everything other than Red's mom. My name is Rocket, and I am one of the co-hosts of the show.
Red here, aka Evander. This is a podcast about everything other than my mom. It's accurate and oddly specific. I wanted to start off with a fun fact for myself this week. I actually booked
Man,
a
I got you
cruise.
like all messed up.
Yeah.
Did not see that coming, did you?
No, you son of a bitch. But yeah, I booked a cruise for September.
What?
It's yeah. I'm going with my adopted parents. It's in what was the name of this cruise? Um, Allure of the Seas, and it's like a we're going to Mexico and Honduras, and there's this really cool thing called the Boss like submarine Boss underwater scooter. It's the breathing observation submersible scooter, and I'm
What?
going to be going in one of those to do scuba diving in Honduras during the cruise.
Oh, that's wild.
It's gonna be pretty cool. I'm excited. And then there's like this Jeep Trek thing in Mexico, and I'm just like I'm super pumped. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Hello, Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg, and my fun fact was when I turned 16, instead of getting a car, I took skydiving lessons.
Did you
Worth it.
did you learn how to skydive?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Did you-
say lessons, but really it was just like a tandem jump. I mean,
okay.
we did like
I
a
was
little
like,
training thing
I didn't know
beforehand,
if we had a
and if
professional base jumper among us. So
no,
Well, he's
they
not
wouldn't let
dead,
me.
so doesn't that make him professional?
No, man,
I,
it was
I guess so.
the place we went to was this little like it was kind of like a in the middle of nowhere, obviously, because they got to get a plane and all that to go up and everything. And I went, my mom and my aunt did, and aunt was just there to watch. She didn't jump or nothing, but we were going and doing the training video and all that, and they were telling us how if you do it if you have eight documented jumps, I forgot the number, it could be more, then they'll let you jump off the plane by yourself, but you have to get your own gear and all that. And they had me all geared up and everything. And one thing they don't tell you is that they'll tell you in the brochure, you're going to do tandem jump, we have a training course, you're going to be real safe and all that stuff. And you're gonna have the option to record it, like video and all that stuff. I was like, oh, cool. What they don't tell you is that if you don't bring your own gear, you have to use their guest gear, and it's all bright pink and sky blue. So I look like the embodiment of cotton candy jumping down. Meanwhile, the same day I was
Nice.
going, there was one of the kids who frequents it who was like 2 years younger than me, but he had already done like a dozen jumps. So he comes out rocking this black and green Monster Energy branded jumpsuit, and I'm sitting here cotton candy for sale
Nice.
with the cap and everything. I look
Oh,
so
That's
silly.
amazing.
And
awesome.
just as I'm about to go, right, it's about to be my turn to jump because there was like another group of two with them doing it the same day. Something happens to the plane. They don't tell us what's going on because we can tell something's going on because it's taken a while for them to, get us ready and everything. And all I could tell, I never found out what exactly happened. All I could tell you is that that day we just waited out there for like half an hour, just like, are we sure we want to still do this? Like they're talking about the plane, but they're not telling us anything. And the last thing I remember before I do actually go in the plane is some dude without any shoes, just like some like swim trunks, no sleeve shirt, and no shoes again, just walking down the field where the plane is at the runway, holding like some sort of part. I don't know if it was like a plane alternator or what. Just holding that part up, walking all the way out there, messing with it, and then he comes back and the part's not there. And they're like, okay, it's all good. So you can imagine for like 30, 45 minutes, we're like,
You think they just do that every day for like the newcomers.
I don't know. They didn't say
To
anything about
mess
like
with them. They
maintenance.
just have
They
some
just
Yeah,
said this
just to
is
random
like
mess
dude.
with them.
routine, you know.
Like,
It wasn't
you know
like
what I mean?
nothing.
Like get you all psyched out. I
I
would do
wouldn't
that. If
doubt
I
it.
owned a skydiving, company, I would do that.
They
That
paired me
that's
with
actually
this.
seems like a thing they would probably do. Yeah.
Yeah, like because you've seen the bungee jumper people, right? Like
They
Oh
they'll
mess
my
with you
like
god,
where
that
they
all
is
the
cut the
time.
such
cord,
a
and then like as
dickhead
soon as
thing to
you jump
do.
off, they're like, "Oh wait, I forgot to strap you
Yeah.
in."
I do not go for that.
Oh, that would be so funny. Oh, I
Oh
love
my
it.
god.
They paired me with like the biggest dude they had for me to tandem jump with,
Oh,
and
perfect.
they're
Well, I
like,
mean,
I
all you
bet you
"We
gotta
would
paired
do
him
is
with
just
we paired
put
you with
him
him
facing
so
down
that."
first.
I forgot his name, but he's like, "We paired you up with Bill. So,
Bill.
once you're in there, that's it. You are gonna jump." He's not because he's got about 200 pounds on you, little kid. I was like 120 pounds, and this dude had like 200 on me, over hundreds of like recorded
Confirmed
jumps. He's like,
drops.
yeah. He's like, "We're gonna jump," and I'm like, "Don't worry, I'm very claustrophobic in this little plane. I'm gonna want to jump out. I want to jump out right now." Because they had us squeezed into this plane that has a brand new alternator.
Uh,
Never knew what that part was. More concerned with the jump.
yeah. Well, good news
I mean,
is
at
like you
least
Anyway,
weren't planning on staying in the plane, so no matter what happened, you were leaving the plane.
exactly.
that is true.
I gotta say, even today, how many years? 12 years later, uh, between that and a car, I would have taken the skydiving again.
Yeah,
I still have the
that's
video
cool.
somewhere. I gotta find it.
That's cool. You should post that like on Instagram or something so that we can look at it.
If anyone has it, it's my mom. She's gonna have it somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, definitely upload that to Instagram or something so we can all go see it.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you can see the you can see my jumpsuit.
very cool. Oh, I guess
R-
I need to go.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have a fun fact for
my
us?
fun fact is that I got Red and myself into reef keeping, and I currently have a whole bunch of saltwater fish, and they're really fun to take care of and grow, and the corals as well. And it's just a really cool experience to have all of those things in your living room.
Rocket got me into the reef keeping hobby. Actually, so I didn't actually want to keep any fish because I just thought they were kind of like I didn't want like a stinky tank in my house or anything like that. But Rocket took me to like this local reef store and I saw like all the corals and the cool saltwater fish and everything. And I was like, no, I need this. I need this in my house. And I started off with like that 20-gallon water box tank. And from there, it was like, am I gonna keep upgrading like one small tank, like 20 gallons to 40 gallons to 60? Like, is this? I thought about it. Is this something I want like 10 years from now? And I was like, yeah. So I went and got I just jumped from 20-gallon to 200-gallon Red Sea reefer like reef tank. And I'm like I took a bunch of pictures and stuff. I need to upload everything to Instagram. But yeah, I've got a lot on Instagram right now of my tank.
Can we just talk about how the fish store told us that it needed 2 people to lift that tank, but in all reality,
Yeah,
it took 6 people to lift
yeah,
that
there
tank?
was 6 of us to lift that. That was just the glass part of the tank. That's not even
Just
the
the glass.
stand. We built the stand, and just to lift the glass was like it took 6 of us to lift that onto the stand. Oh my gosh. And then I filled it myself with RODI water. I had 4 RODI units, and it took like 2 days to fill up the tank.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I think with that, it's time to kick off to our main content that we have prepared for you today. We are going to be talking today about your data, not my data, not Red's data, not Greg's data, but your data and the history of what different entities have been able to gather from you and how to protect yourself. So, with that being said, Greg, what are you talking about today?
I'm going to be talking about some of the data breaches that have happened, and I'm just going to go over the ones in the U.S. because we would need a longer podcast to talk about the ones happening outside of the U.S., especially Russia. But for now, data breaches in the US.
And Red, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about data collection and like the laws behind like what companies can and can't do when collecting your data and how they have to host it and if anything happens with that data, what they're supposed to do.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that sounds really interesting. Okay, let's see. Who's going to kick it off first?
I say we go with I want to hear Rocket kick it off for us this time.
Okay. So I'm going to kick it off with talking about something that was before we think of zeros and ones and data privacy, especially with everyone having a phone today. This was before cell phones and before computers largely. And this was Roe v. Wade.
Roe v. Wade. What does Roe v. Wade have to do with data?
Roe v. Wade.
Genetic data.
It was the medical data and whether it could be publicly disclosed.
Really? Could you describe the Roe v. Wade case for people who don't know exactly what happened?
Well, it was the case for abortion and okay, Lifeline, Greg, medical expert.
This ain't medical. This is law. Also, yeah.
This is medical. This is a lot. Also, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So the reason I bring up Roe v. Wade is because of HIPAA and our medical data, in a sense, is protected, right? And Roe v. Wade made a stride in that, specifically towards abortion in a way, but really around, is your data private and can anyone know about that? So I just thought that was interesting. Another one is Katz versus the United States, which is around warrantless government search of your data, basically. And it kind of helped push along the need for governments to, or for the United States government to obtain a warrant before they can start digging through your, personal data. I would say the exception to that is still social media, obviously, because you are, again, giving that away. But I think we'll talk about that later here in the show. So, yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. Okay, so this was the government was trying to like do surveillance on citizens and they have to like prove now that they're doing surveillance. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. How does that directly connect to Roe v. Wade?
Well, they're separate cases, but the connection is with what the government and what other entities are allowed to know about you. What can be public information?
Right. So this was the decision between public and private information.
Yes.
Okay.
This is personal data privacy, right? So
this is our first step into data and defining data as an individual's belonging, right? Instead of like a public resource.
Yep, absolutely. And so the final case that I thought was interesting about this was the Riley versus California case. And this is where police officers must obtain a warrant before searching a cell phone because of the acknowledgement that cell phones contained a bunch of data, right?
Right, private data.
Yep, private data. Exactly. Data. And you needed to obtain a warrant. So to counter this, though, we all remember September 11th and the Patriot Act, right? We've all had that thrown around. Right?
Yeah. Well, let's go over the Patriot Act.
So let's talk about some of the key provisions of the Patriot Act. So the first one is authorizing the use of roving wiretaps. Okay? So again, you just have to be a quote unquote suspected terrorist, and you then fall into the category to where they can wiretap you and listen in on every single conversation.
Right.
The second one is the authorization of collection of business records, including financial and credit information in the course of a quote unquote terrorism investigation. Again, this is all accusation, not proven, right? In all of these instances. So they can just say that you're a terrorist.
Innocent.
Yeah,
exactly.
The bar could be like on the ground.
Exactly. In addition to the third key provision in the Patriot Act was expansion of the definition of domestic terrorism. And this includes acts that are dangerous to human life and violate the criminal laws of a state or the United States. So basically, anyone could be considered a terrorist that committed a crime. that was
Right.
violent.
Yeah,
Any
and that
single person.
that becomes with some abuse of power there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The fourth one, authorization of sneak and peek searches, which allowed law enforcement to search a suspect's property without immediately notifying them. So if you weren't home, they could go through your stuff.
Oh
Disgusting.
goodness, I was not aware of that. So sneak and peek, you said?
Yes, sneak and peek searches.
So
That
what
was
are the
part of the
laws around
Patriot
sneak
Act.
and peek? Do we know?
I
Like
do
what?
not know what they are today. I just am. This is what was signed into law when the entire nation was terrified of,
This
you
is
know, being
confusing.
attacked again.
So sneak and peek allows them, if you're not home, allows them to go into your home.
Not anymore. Not
Okay.
anymore. I think that I
Okay.
don't believe so unless you are specifically thought to be a terrorist or and it
Jesus.
probably
But
is it probably is removed now, I would imagine.
okay,
I would
I
hope it
would hope
is.
so.
Yeah. And then the final thing was basically more power and as if this wasn't enough, but more power and more money thrown towards the government. Expansion of the government's ability to use intelligence tools and to investigate in criminal activity. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. And all
that's
of
just a
this is in the
blanket
sake of
policy, just to say here's some more
yeah.
money to make sure that you can hire some more people to listen to more Americans. So
And all of this, just to point this back into data, right? All of this is related to data because this is the government's excuse to collect as much data as possible to develop profiles on individual U.S. citizens. Is that like an accurate? Am I thinking about
it
that
is,
right?
and you know, from the government's perspective, and from I will say from their perspective, having information about every citizen to know what kind of threat vectors they can expect, right? That's what they're trying to do
Right. But
in a
I
very basic term.
I'm going to
But
touch on this developing individual profiles for citizens a little bit in my topic and why that could be a negative thing.
right, right,
Not just for our protection, but like there's ways that you could use this in bad ways, and I'll discuss that a little later when we get into my topic.
okay, okay. Some other cases that I thought were interesting to bring up. During the same year that the Patriot Act was signed, Microsoft went to court because the United States was upset. And in this case, the government sought access to emails stored on Microsoft servers as part of a criminal investigation. And Microsoft was essentially refusing to give it
Right,
just
because it's
outright. And so,
Microsoft's. It belongs to Microsoft, like it's a physical
correct,
entity, right? That belongs to
correct,
Microsoft, and the government doesn't have a right to take that without some sort of warrant or anything like that.
right. That is absolutely correct. So they required then the warrants, right, for law enforcement to have access to it. So the second one, and this is one that a lot of people, when they think about the government trying to get access to something, this is the one I think that everyone is still fresh on their memory, and it is Apple versus the FBI. And this
Oh,
was
that's not
I
fresh on
remember
my
that one.
memory. Wait, what happened with that? Apple versus the FBI?
I
I don't
remember
think
that
I'm
this
aware
one.
of this
was
one.
it was the San Bernardino shooter, right, Greg? I
I
believe that's what
believe
it
so.
was. Yeah, and so this is where the FBI had obtained the shooter's phone and Apple refused to unlock it.
Oh,
They had the phone of the shooter and Apple was like, "Nope, we're not going to unlock it."
wow. But they had like concrete evidence that that was
They
the
Oh yeah,
shooter.
I mean they pulled it off the guy. Like, yeah,
Oh,
it's
and
his.
Apple still refused.
Apple
Wow.
refused to unlock it because
Okay,
they're
there's a line though, right? Like there's a line versus
I
like, oh, that's our property
you
and that's ours. But
Apple's
then
argument was that
there's a
if we do it
civic
for this
duty.
case, then every suspected person, if we provide this tool to the FBI to unlock it, then every
Oh,
person that's accused of something, they can immediately get in there without a warrant,
well,
whatever.
okay,
Like
that's
basically,
different.
but
The FBI
that was
wanted the
Apple's concern,
tool.
right? The
Yeah.
F- the FBI wanted the I think Apple just still blanketly refused to unlock it though, citing
Oh,
user
okay.
privacy.
Yeah, didn't they
Okay.
get like a third party like tool or
They did.
software to get it unlocked?
They did. Yes,
And
they
it was
did.
like
So
from some
say
like
so there's
foreign
endless
country?
possibilities for that one. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's pretty wild that because there's like a civic duty, right? As well as
Right.
citizens where yeah, go ahead, send us the phone, we'll unlock it, but I'm not going to provide you the tools to do so. And that's fine.
Exactly, exactly. I think the FBI was trying to go about it the correct way first and just have
Yeah.
Apple unlock it, but then they had to resolve, you know, had to turn
Yeah,
to other measures to get it unlocked.
that's
So,
pretty wild.
Can you imagine what that would do to their stocks?
God.
I mean, it depends, right? If
I
you're
mean,
selling a
they would
phone that you want
legitimately
user
lose
privacy,
face if, like, they did
I think
unlock it for them, and
Apple
that's probably
was,
what their main concern was, because
yeah.
customers like Apple products. I remember when I was in, like, high school, it was like, "Oh, yeah, Apples never get viruses or anything like that."
Such a dumb statement, but yeah.
That's what
yeah.
most of them believed.
Well, they believe it because, and I'll just throw this out here really quick because Red and I both know this. Apple doesn't get hacked because Apple is like less than 10% of the market share.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why Apple doesn't get
Microsoft
hacked.
owns like a majority of the market share as far as
Yeah,
businesses and things. Like
exactly.
that's why like they're the number one target, then Linux, and then Apple's like at the very bottom.
Right. Because other than a few key executives that just prefer a MacBook, no one else uses MacBooks in the company other than the creatives.
Yeah.
And there's no sensitive data that's worth stealing on creative laptops. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It'll
just to throw that tidbit out there is why people say that Apple is more secure. It's not.
It's not. Yeah, it's
No
just
one
less
wants to
targeted. Well,
bother.
technically, by definition, it is more secure because it's less targeted. But it doesn't mean it doesn't get viruses.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's security by not caring.
Obscurity.
Not really even obscurity. It's just like the hackers are like, I mean, there's no value, so I'm not going to worry about
Yeah.
it. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, back to the case though. That was one of the biggest ones, and I remember, Greg, you mentioned the stock price. I can't remember what happened, but I can imagine it could have gone one or two ways, or it could have just stayed the same. So
I imagine it went up, seeing a big company like Apple tell the FBI, "Nah."
yeah, it could have
Nah.
gone down too, though. I mean,
It could have. It could have gone down.
Could have gone both ways.
Yeah, that's kind of like a split decision there.
Yeah.
I feel like that does nothing but help Apple, like just telling the FBI no, and then them just giving up and just, all right, fine, we'll just find a third party.
Well,
I think that last part probably did.
you have
That
a large population that believes like wholeheartedly in the U.S. government and their entities, right? And then you have a large population that's against the U.S. government and their entities. And all of the population, as far as we know in America, is like invested in Apple, like
Apple,
so that's like
the new
a
government.
50-50 chance there, that it could go up or down. Or close to 50-50.
I will say this though, the iPhone is no longer as prevalent as it used to be.
Really? What makes you say that?
Because they've had the same design for the past like 3 or 4 iterations.
I hear they're getting a lot of I don't know, hate because the people aren't buying the newer iPhone, but I wouldn't say it's not as prevalent. I would say it's just as prevalent, maybe even more so. People are still buying iPhones like crazy over anything else, but maybe they're not upgrading as much.
Well,
yeah, they're just getting way
let's
more.
see.
More
No,
expensive.
I take that back. I have to take that back because apparently, actually, this very last quarter, Q4 of 2022, they achieved the highest market share out of any other years previously since the first iPhone.
Yeah.
Instantly contradicted yourself.
I did. I had heard for a while that they were actually like going down, and Samsung was taking a larger market share. And
look at the time step and see how
but
long.
honestly, they're not. I mean, Samsung is maintained about the same. They're again, Samsung is right underneath Apple. Samsung and Apple both make up pretty freaking close to 50% of the market share. But
yeah.
Who's in
How's
third place?
Qualcomm? Qualcomm is what I would want to know, because more than Samsung, Qualcomm's more involved with mobile devices than Samsung.
Well, but like from a chip perspective, or like
yeah, because Samsung uses Qualcomm chips.
I don't know.
Yeah, like the Snapdragon chips, those are Qualcomm.
Yeah.
Don't they use different chips in like South Korea
They
or
use
not like market? Like
it depends on the
They
year.
use, mostly everybody uses Qualcomm.
They use Qualcomm, but they're different Snapdragon chips.
Yeah, that's
for
right.
this latest.
But they're all Qualcomm. Like it's literally Apple's like M chips versus Qualcomm chips. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Okay, really quick, I'll look it up. Let's see. Oh, never mind. I got blocked by a paywall. Okay, we will discuss this on a later episode.
Yeah. We'll discuss mobile devices, like,
yes,
and how they're affecting the world. Yeah.
Okay,
because
I
it's
there's no validity to this whatsoever, but
yeah.
apparently I did find a infographic, and apparently Qualcomm takes up 29% of the chip segment.
Oh
MediaTek, and again, this isn't just I don't think this is just mobile. Well, no, maybe it is.
no,
Um,
it's got to be like
MediaTek
more than mobile.
26%,
Okay.
and then Apple takes up 13%. Samsung makes their own chips now, and they take up 13%.
Really,
But
Samsung makes their own chips
they
now?
do well, and
Yeah,
remember
the
they're opening
Equinox
up.
one.
Yeah, and they're opening up that huge chip factory too here in
Oh, what's
Texas, I
the?
believe.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look into the Samsung chips and see how they compare to Qualcomm. I'm pretty positive they don't even compete with Apple's chips. They never have.
I don't know. I don't know. I know they're investing heavily in making their own. So because they're planning on using some of those, I know they're making
They're
some
taking
of
the
the.
Apple route then. You know,
Yeah,
they're
they are.
really
Yeah.
trying to solidify their own market.
Yes. Okay. So I think I'm
Yeah.
going to leave the other cases off for now. There's a couple of other cases that are more about. Well, this one's kind of interesting, I guess. Google, so in 2013, Google was accused of intercepting and collecting data from unsecured Wi Fi networks as part of its Street View mapping service. So
So
basically, what it was doing is it was using users' phones. From my understanding of this, it was using users' phones, automatically connecting them to Wi Fi, and
oh.
then downloading data, relevant points of information of data using their Wi-Fi, using
Oh.
unsecured Wi-Fi networks.
Oh, I didn't know about the Wi-Fi part, but I was aware Google, and I'm pretty sure they still do this. When you turn on like Google Maps, like they're monitoring your phone to detect like the how heavy the traffic and stuff is, and to connect you to Wi-Fi and then take your data, ooh, that's a reach right there.
Yes,
Wow,
yes. So, and this was a litigation case in 2013 that they
good.
discovered that. So,
I'm glad
um,
they went to court for that because that's not okay.
yeah. So would you guys like to know how Google and Facebook actually use your data?
Sure.
It's all, for the most part, services and advertising.
Yep, and that gets into the data collection too.
If you
Yeah,
were to, if you were to if you were to pick one way that Google makes money, how would you think that it's made? And Facebook
Google.
Advertising.
advertising.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
because
Everyone
Google's
uses their
YouTube
service,
platform.
and it's
Yeah.
free, right? Everyone
Yep.
uses it. Almost all of Google's services are free, right? So how do they make their money? Advertising.
That's right.
How do they improve advertising for a specific person? They take their data and they use it. I won't say against the person, but they use it to, in their minds, better their own product, right? They
Yeah.
use it. They use the person's data to better their own product.
That's right. Yeah. And I think
So
that's like a perfect segue into data collection.
yes,
If you want me to take it from here, Rocket, I totally
absolutely.
can. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so like you were saying, Rocket, they all these companies and entities, they collect your data specifically to build these profiles against you so that they can manipulate you into clicking on advertisements and things to make money, right? Um and I wanted to get into like the laws behind data collection and kind of like what everyone's so focused on, right? So w- when we talk about data collection, everybody focuses on consent, right? Like I don't want to give consent to Facebook for data collection, right? But it's not what we should be focusing on. So there's a lot of laws in place today that protect your data via consent, right? You have like end user license agreements you have to sign and stuff like that. But that's where the problem actually comes from is you have like Facebook with like a several thousand word document that you have to sign, or PayPal. PayPal has a 36,000 word document that you have to sign for consent. Nobody's going to read that. You're just going to hit okay, you know? So is consent the right answer? Probably not, right? We should probably just hold these companies liable for how they're using our data, and we should have options after the fact, which is I think the EU has like the GDPR, the Data Protection Regulation, and California also implemented some laws where like you can go and say, "Hey, I want you to purge my information from your database," right? And they legally have to do it now. They didn't have that before, but now they do in some places. And then you can also have your data encrypted and stuff like that. Those are like the right route to take. But as far as like just consent, I feel like that's way too vague, and that's all they just they use all of this information to, oh, yeah. Have you guys heard about Cambridge Analytica?
Yes, I was just going to bring that up. I was going to touch up on what Rocket was talking about with those cases, but yes, go on.
Yeah, so this again with data collection and consent, right? So you go to Facebook, you sign up, and they give you this 30,000 word document or whatever it is, and you just hit yes because you're not going to read that. Nobody's going to read that. And in fact, there's a study somewhere in 2008 that shows it would take 30 full working days, 30 full working days to read the consent forms from 40 of the most popular sites. So we visit more than 40 sites, in a month. And to be able to read every single one of those consent forms would take you 30 full working days, right?
That's absolutely insane.
That's nuts. You
That's
wouldn't be able to
unreasonable.
do it. You physically
No, you
cannot
couldn't do
read
it.
these consent forms, right? And then that leads us to things like Cambridge Analytica, where you signed up for Facebook, you've hit yes on your consent form, right? Now Cambridge Analytica is scraping data from Facebook and end users to build personalized profiles to manipulate elections.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Cambridge Analytica is a political consulting firm, and they're
They're
using data
aren't they
getting
like
off.
a political think tank, quote unquote? I
Kind
think
of. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they got their eggs in a lot of baskets, but
okay.
that's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild that you have situations like that where you're able to build these profiles and manipulate people not only for advertisements, but for freaking you can manipulate political elections like this. You can convince people that politicians are evil or good, You can
All by the ads and the ad placement and who it's
yeah.
going to.
Yeah, and you silo these people into one mindset, right? And
Right.
we've been talking about this for the last few years, actually, during like the Trump election and things like that. I think actually the Trump election really brought a lot of light to this kind of data manipulation in general.
Yep.
How you had a lot of people like flat earthers and things like that who would stick to flat earthing because all of the information they would get is from flat earthers, and
Right.
they would never leave that train of thought. They would never ever look at a different perspective because these artificial intelligences and these data that's been collected on them and these profiles that's been made on them has told them they only want to see flat earth stuff. Well, no, we want to teach them everything. And that's the problem. We're like siloing these people. We need to like break this pattern, you know?
Well, and a way to break the pattern, in my opinion, is educate people on how to go outside of what the search engine is telling you. For
That's
example,
right.
if you're a Republican, if you are a hardcore Republican, let me give you some advice. Go to other media sources, not for their opinion, but for their facts, and then compare it to your sources of facts.
Yes.
Or go to someone who has no skin in the game at all, like BBC.
Yeah, quit basing all of your facts and information on your personal opinion.
Right.
Really try to understand multiple perspectives.
Yes.
Don't let the artificial intelligence
Because
dictate
the
what you know.
Exactly,
You
because the
do.
broader that you use that search engine, the less they can pin you down and put you in a
That's
corner.
right. Yeah, the harder it is for them to build a profile on you, the more open you are to other perspectives.
Exactly. And choose something that's not political, right? If you have a certain political view, then sure, go to your own political, where you feel that it's going to make the most sense to you from someone speaking it, right? If you like Fox News, then go listen to Fox News for your political issue. But say it's something that's not political, like for example, the Ohio train derailment, right? One day, go look up news stories on CNN. The next day, go to MSNBC. The next day, go to Fox News. And then the next day, go to BBC. And then the
Right.
next day, go to Al Jazeera, right? Like just spread them out enough so that way when you need to know something, then you get all of the information as accurate as possible and as broadly as possible, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Perspective. Perspective is so important.
Exactly,
And
because those even non-political things are written in a way to manipulate you.
that's right. Yes. We're always pushing for someone's agenda, and the best way to do that is to manipulate somebody into getting something you want, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. How do they make money? How does media make money? They get listeners, they get sponsorships, they get deals, right?
It's a
And
way to you guys know the movie A Bug's Life, right? Where like all the ants like team up against the crickets, like eventually they learn like the there's so much of them that they can overwhelm like these totalitarian crickets.
right,
Right? So it's kind of like a way to manipulate the ants, right? So that the ants move, the whole party of ants moves in the way you want them to. So instead of having the ants figuring out and thinking individually, we can stand up for ourselves. Now we're taking all the ants and sticking a screen in front of their face and saying everybody needs to think this way.
right.
Right? Imagine if
Yep.
the crickets had this power, right? The ants would be so like
Grasshopper. Grasshopper.
grasshopper, yeah, crickets, grasshoppers, whatever they were. They would be able to manipulate the ants rather than just control them through fear, and that's way more powerful.
Yep, exactly. Because as ants, we're not afraid. We're just mad at each other.
That's right.
You guys want to know how much Facebook had to pay the FTC for Cambridge Analytica?
How much?
$5 billion for its role
Ooh,
in the scandal.
I mean,
yeah,
It's
it's
because there
so
was a loophole in Facebook's API that allowed apps to collect the data, not just from the users who took part in that, and the online. It was like an online quiz, uh, that like gauged your likes, interests, social connections, and all that stuff. That's what they were marketing as, and that's what they were using to get Facebook users' data. Not only did it get the users' data, the ones who actually participated in the quiz, but also all their friends' data and user friends as well who didn't participate in it as
oh
well.
my
yep,
god.
yeah.
So
And
it was
anything
like,
they had access to, anything that was publicly available, they took it.
yeah. So Facebook had to pay $5 billion to the United States Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, and Cambridge Analytica shut down in May
Yep.
2018.
So just a reminder, if you have like the Facebook profile or something like that, there's options to set it as private now. Like set it as private. Don't make it public, let your friends and stuff. But then that gets into the thing you just said, Greg, is even if you were private in this case, there was a loophole. So if your profile was private, but you were friends with somebody who had a public profile, that kind of screwed you over.
I I want to touch on this at the very end, on how to protect yourself
Yes,
from
I,
Oh,
and
I
your
want to
same.
data.
touch on that as
Yeah.
well, but I want to just get into a little more of the laws and stuff in place regarding data collection, just to inform people of how they should be aware of these laws and what they're allowed to do to protect their data from these companies as far as data collection, not necessarily being hacked, but from data collection.
Yeah.
So like California's has the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA, right?
Right.
Okay. You have a right to ratification. This updates and adds to a consumer's right to correct inaccurate personal information, right? So that
Correct.
means if your personal information is inaccurate, you have a right to reach out to whatever company has that inaccurate information and have them change it. And they have to change it. They have to. They're required to by law, right?
Ooh, I could see some fun stuff with that.
And the best part about this might be for the state of California, but I just want to iterate that just because it's for the state of California doesn't mean you can't utilize these laws as like a Texas citizen, right? Because if a company operates any business in
Any
California or has
business.
any data in California or
That's absolutely
consumers,
right.
they
Just
have
because
to
they're not
implement
right.
these. So
And
just yeah,
just
go
because
go
they're
ahead, Rex.
not a California company does not mean that they do not have to abide by these laws. Red and I know this as software developers, that all of these laws that come into place, they affect every company basically in the
They
United
do.
States.
They
That
do.
is not a local I'm going to say a bakery in North Dakota, right? If you have a website and a California consumer comes across your website, guess what? You're doing business in California.
Yep, and you have to implement these, right?
Yes.
And just remember, just because you're in Texas doesn't mean you can't use these, right? So
Yep.
California also has right to restriction. This grants the consumer the right to limit the use and disclosure of their sensitive personal information. So this means that if a company has your information, you could say, I want you to limit how you use my information. You cannot sell it. You cannot use it for advertisements. You can't do this and that with it, right? You can only hold it and do nothing else with it. right? And
Right.
companies have to abide by this. And if you find out any way that they're like selling for advertisements or anything like that, you sue them. You can press. It's worse than that because it's a law. You could press charges. You can not
I
just sue them. You could press
I
charges.
I think the big problem with this though is how do you prove it?
How do you prove it? That's a great point.
And
Usually these
how do you
companies get
find out?
audited,
Right?
right?
How do you find out though? But are those audits accessible to the public? No.
Well, it depends. That's
Can
a
a
great
can
question. It depends on
let
the
let's
audit.
say let's say that I'm not a software developer, right? Let's say I'm a accountant, right? And I have a fear that my data is being used and sold by Facebook, right?
Yeah. So you
How
can
do I how do
what
I
you would
find
do.
out? And how do I and I mean because where do you have to go to get that data? Where?
Yeah.
Facebook.
That's a
You have to
great point.
trust the you have to
You have
trust the
to
company
trust the
that you think
company.
is not is lying to you to give you data that you
You
have to believe is accurate,
you
right?
can
Like it
either
doesn't make any sense.
request like a third party audit, you know what I mean? But you have to have some sort of like evidence or
But how much
something that
money?
would
How much
I
money?
don't know. I don't
You
know
know
how
what I
much
mean?
money that would be. I don't know if you can convince the local government to do a third party audit. I don't know if they do third party audits already. You know what I mean? The government could already be doing third party audits. I have
For
no
an
idea.
individual person though,
No. For
I
the
highly doubt it.
entire for the
It
entire
probably varies based on state.
company.
Since there's no federal data breach like notification law, it's all just left up to the states.
It
Well,
is left up to the states. You're
honestly
right.
though, it's left up to the company to
It
notify
is
the
left up to the
public.
company more than
Gotcha.
the states because companies more often than the states have their own individual audits that they do internally.
Right. And what
Um,
happens to share prices when companies get hacked? So why would they tell anyone unless they absolutely have to, right?
but yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, again, this like Rocket said, this just comes down to trust and keeping an eye on these companies and seeing if you can keep track of their audits if they're even publicly available. But if you have an inkling, like even an inkling that they're using your data incorrectly, you can report them. You know what I mean? And if they get
Right.
enough reports, they're gonna perform an audit. You know, they're gonna look into it, but they need enough reports. It can't just be one person, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it has to be a collective effort for all of us to hold these companies accountable.
Going a little bit off topic, but kind of on topic as well. You know how like some like products like or services, mainly products, they have like an option in their settings if they got a screen, and there's an option to opt out of advertising, data collection, and all that stuff, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I don't think I've seen that yet.
I've seen it in like it's okay. So it's mostly on like websites and stuff like that. But like another place where you can see that on is on smart TVs. Like I got an LG TV, and it's got that option in deep in the settings to opt out of user specific advertising and data
Yes.
collection and all that stuff.
Basically it keeps so the way that most of these work is I think the EU actually requires 3 levels now. I could be wrong on that, but it started with we're still going to record your data, right? But we're not going to assign that data to you.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
going to be
So it's just
anonymous.
It's
going to be
obscure
like
data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
or
obscure data.
assigned to like the device's specific ID or serial number,
You
right?
can still see the device's specific ID or whatever, but it's not tied to a specific person because
Person. Yeah.
that's where it's tied into, right? That's the scare.
Right.
I'm still pulling every data, like for example, like Samsung, Roku, whatever. If we're going to talk about TVs, they can pull how long you're watching Netflix, what you're watching on
Yep.
Netflix, what your trends are, everything else. But if you opt out of it specifically being about you, then they're going to say that this specific TV watched Netflix for this time and this specific
Yep.
TV was watching this show and this show. So then that data gets fed into a larger algorithm to say how many people are watching Netflix tonight, right? How
Yeah.
many people
Yeah,
watched
like what's the
Netflix
most
this week?
popular show and can we display that on
Exactly.
everybody's
And
TV?
Netflix does that too, right? You gotta remember it's not just the TV, it's the apps
Yeah.
themselves,
Look at
right?
Netflix. Every time you
yeah.
sign into Netflix, they have like the 10 top shows. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
How
that's
do
what
they get
everyone's
that?
watching this week.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are you saying either way they're still collecting the data? It's just when you
Yes,
opt out, it
they
just
are
It's
anonymous.
not
always
It's just
touching
like
collecting
you.
data.
okay.
Yes, they're
There
always
will
collecting
always
data
be collecting data.
because that's the contractual agreement that you inherently sign with the privacy rights and everything else that you when you first sign up for a service, you have to go through there and it's in there somewhere. Then it's the right to collect data, right?
And that
Yep.
So
goes back to consent, right? And that's why
yes,
I keep bringing up the fact that consent is not the answer to
I
this.
agreed because here's the other thing. If you don't consent, you can't use the app.
That's right. Give somebody an iPhone. Give somebody an
Yes.
iPhone. They just bought $1,000 iPhone. You go through and it says, "Do you consent?" You say no. Now you have a brick.
Yep.
What are you
That's
gonna do?
exactly right.
Now
That's
you got
exactly
a
right.
paperweight.
It's the
Yep.
same thing, but it's the same thing with Google, right? I mean, like, can I consent and say that I don't want Google to know anything about me, right? And I again, I'm a Samsung user, so I don't want Google to know anything about me, right? But then guess what? Every time that I go look for my favorite sushi restaurant, every time that I go look for everything else, it's just so ingrained in our lives
It
to
is.
have the convenience of your phone knowing what you want to do
Yep.
that
And it's
that
nice.
people just actively sign up for. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else, right? I mean, I love
Yeah.
that my phone knows where I want to go and
That's
knows
right. I
where I've
agree.
been and knows,
I'm happy with
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
You
yeah,
can't
Whenever
escape
I
the
look something up,
convenience.
I'm glad it knows where my
right.
address, my home
The
address is immediately.
exactly. The
Makes it easy.
scary part is when they start using that for advertising and using that for elections and
Manipulation.
using that for, they use that data to manipulate you
It's not necessarily the
without you
advertising,
realizing
it's
it,
the
I guess.
manipulation. The manipulation is scary because the possibilities when you can manipulate an entire population are endless,
Well,
right?
agreed. But it's even something as simple as, so I search for food, right? If I go on Google and I say food near me, how many times do you click on just the first thing that pops up?
Usually, okay, so one thing everybody should know, if you search something on Google, it's usually the third thing down or fourth thing down you click because the first three are advertisements.
Agreed, but not,
But
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 some
that
people actually
technically
click the
that's the
advertisements
first
too.
thing. Yeah, the
Yeah,
fourth thing down is technically the first thing, and I
right.
always click that.
Yep, always. In fact, this is actually really interesting because I used to know these statistics. I don't want to get them wrong. Uh, keep going. I'm gonna bring this up in just a second.
Going
Okay.
back to the opt out thing on my TV. One thing, first off, it's buried in the settings. It's not something that you're normally going to look for, right? Or the average user isn't going to look for. That the fact that they already opted you into this data collection. Another thing that I noticed is that when I updated my TV, it reset the settings and it opted me back in to that same into the
Now that's a
data
problem.
collection.
So
That's a huge
what's
problem.
happening is you're agreeing to something. You may not even have noticed it. When you went to update, you probably agreed to some term and service
Well,
because legally they can't do that.
but here's the
I
thing
went I
though.
went back in and turned it off, but it was just like, oh, so every time I update
You have
the
to
OS, I
re-agree to
gotta
their
like
terms and
re-opt
service, their
out.
consent, right?
Now,
Their
Yeah.
consent to collect data.
here's an interesting proposition.
I
Okay,
could be opting
it
out of something different this time around. They could have just did some legalese in that new terms of service where it's just like now you're just
That's what
opting
most
out of.
updates are just changes in like the end user license agreement or something like that, and they'll have you download and update air quotes, and it's just a change in the end user license agreement, so you have to re-sign it and give them consent.
here's an interesting question. Should you be able to buy a product or service before signing the consent, acknowledging that
Again,
you're going to give
I
their
think
data away?
consent is the wrong answer for handling the situation. If
Okay,
somebody
what's the
hands me
replacement?
what if somebody the replacement is holding companies accountable, laws and regulations, right? Just like how California and Europe are doing now. They're making sure that consumers' data is protected and encrypted. They're making sure consumers have the right to reach out to companies and say, "I don't want you to do this." Right?
I mean, I agree, but you're still consenting.
You're it's not necessarily because you're coming in after the fact, and then those companies are being held accountable. It's not about a 40,000 page document that you have to read.
I agree. I agree with that, and I think there should also be some regulation around how simplistic you have to make a consent
There
form,
should
right?
absolutely
But
be some regulation on that.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to be
That's
relying on
out of hand.
we shouldn't have to rely on third parties to like paraphrase it. You can go on like TOSDR, which is Terms of Service Didn't Read.org. And it's a community driven project that makes it easier for users to understand terms of services for various online services or big name companies and stuff like that. They actually like paraphrase it down to be like what is this whole like 3-page like 3-page run-on sentence of a legal document like say for this specific incident, like right there is like, oh, this basically just says that you can't do X and Y but they can do Z. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. Another
So
one that does that.
Greg, Colorado Privacy Act requires that you have the right to opt out of targeted ads, and that might be why I haven't seen it. Is because this is specifically for Colorado, and I just have not seen it implemented yet here in
um
Texas.
Maybe I
I-
have
I'm
I
sure.
bought the
No,
TV
I'm
in
sure it's being
Texas.
implemented on like all devices and things because to be in standard with Colorado, if they want to sell their goods in Colorado, they have to implement that, and that's something they would implement across the board for all devices.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure I haven't seen it yet because they haven't implemented it
Or you just haven't
quite
looked deep
yet.
into the
Because
settings.
this was effective July 1st, 2023.
Well, it
So
hasn't happened
that's
yet.
probably why I haven't even seen it yet.
Well, I bought the TV in Texas. You know what TV I got? It's the
Yeah.
one you have. So we have the same TV. You probably just haven't seen it in the
The OLED?
settings. Yeah.
The LG OLED? Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Somehow I totally missed it.
Yeah, it's in the settings. Yours is only like 1 gen older than mine, so I
Yeah,
don't
mine
see
is one
why it
gen
wouldn't be
older.
in there.
Yeah.
But, you know,
That
shit
could be all the
happens.
difference though it needs. It's just one generation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pivot this really quick, just to kind of hit on the power that Google has
Yeah.
in their arena.
After you're
And
done, can I
to
talk about data breaches?
yes, you can. We do need to touch on that, because it's a really big problem too, right? When if someone hacks one airline and takes them down to a crippling halt, what would most people do if they're stuck at an airport? They go to another airline, right?
Right?
Okay. Guess what market share Google has across search engines? If you had to think of a number from 0 to 100 of how many people, like, what percentage do you think Google is?
In the
2/3,
90s.
66.
No, in the
66%.
90s. In the 90s.
92.5%.
That's
I
right.
was
Yeah.
way
The
off.
next
Be in the
contender,
90s.
the next contender is Bing at 3%.
Yep. That sounds
Oh,
about
you know
right.
what? I got I got search engines mixed up with web browsers. 'Cause I was thinking of
That's a-
Firefox
That's a
having a
whole
big
separate
portion.
conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole
That's
separate thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay,
also just
yeah.
as relevant because think about how many people use Chrome.
Almost everybody.
Almost everyone uses Chrome or Firefox, but if you
Or
use Chrome,
Edge.
guess what?
Yeah.
They're capturing everything about you.
That's
Well,
true.
Edge is now Chrome. Edge is now Chrome.
Edge is Chromium based, right?
It's
But
Chromium-
it's managed by Microsoft. It's Chromium based.
Yeah, but let's
Yeah.
let's think about what kind of deal with user data was made so they could do that.
Chromium is an open source software, so
It is.
there wouldn't need to be a deal.
Plus, this is
but
Microsoft,
the-
so I don't know if they're
Yeah.
like itching for.
Well, Microsoft's gathering data too. So
Microsoft
Yeah.
collects plenty of data. They're
Yeah.
just as bad as Google, and they're just as bad as Facebook. Like all of them collect data. All of them. Data is the new currency, right? Like that's between big business and tech. Data is currency, and we're talking about like if I were to start a company today in tech, it would have to be something around data, right? Data collection, artificial intelligence,
Right.
identifying patterns, right? That would be a way to make good money in tech today. And
Right.
that's because data is currency. I exchange data for $1, right? Just like I would exchange a euro for a certain amount of dollars, right?
Right.
Data is currency.
A couple of other interesting facts really quick. Mobile makes up 60% of Google searches.
I can
Not
see
really a
that.
surprise, but tablet only makes up 2%. So for all the
Oh,
web devs
I
out
thought
there
they
still
lumped-
designing for tablets, I'm sorry.
I was thinking
Yeah.
they were lumping tablets and mobile phones together. I knew tablets was going to be low. I didn't think it was going to be that low.
Yeah, 2%. No one owns a fucking tablet anymore. Jesus.
Not anymore,
They're
no.
pointless. Like it's just a
bought
bigger
that-
phone.
It's
I
just
bought that
exactly.
iPad last year, just because I hadn't been with the Apple ecosystem in like almost a decade. No, a decade exactly from that time.
Right.
And I was trying to like re-download apps that I had previously downloaded. Either they were gone from the App Store completely, or they were replaced by a free version. Mind you, I had paid for a lot of these apps because 99-cent apps were the deal back in the day.
Right.
Now they've all been replaced by the same exact app, just for free versions, full of microtransactions and all this stuff. It's like, like 10 years ago, I bought this and, it unlocked everything. Now I got to rebuy everything for like quadruple the price.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you got to buy a computer every so often, depending on how forward thinking you are. You can push that out as far as desktops go. Laptops are only good for about 3 or 4 years at most normally.
I would say laptops today last 5 to 6 years.
I had mine.
It depends
for
on how
6
expensive
years,
a
and
laptop
that was
you
like
get.
back in 2014.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. It depends on how
You go
expensive
buy a
get.
$300 laptop at Walmart, it's probably not going to last 5 to 6 years. So.
Yeah, probably last you 3.
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting off topic a little bit. Anyway, the point that I'm driving home with this is how many people click on the first result in Google? Take your guesses. Or make your guesses.
Like the first result, as in the
like
ad,
ad?
first result.
No. The
or
actual first result. The actual
I
first
bet
result.
it's like 90%.
Nope. No, not actually.
Really?
28%. Almost 29%. Okay. But
What are they
here's the
clicking
thing.
on? The ad?
Well, no, they're clicking on the first. So
They're clicking on the ad, the first result. Which
Nope.
is
This
usually
makes up almost 100 here. So number 1 is almost 29%. Number 2 is 14, almost 15%. Number 3 is 8%. Number 4, 5%. So it goes down. But basically, past the 10th search result, you're at less than 1%. And then it just stacks down from there.
I was going to ask what's the percentage of people going to the second page?
I could not even imagine.
You got to be desperate if you got to page 2 of
the
a
second
Google search.
page is like full of like scary things. I don't like to think about the second page. That's the stuff of nightmares.
It's like an NSFW's page.
Yeah.
Anything 2 and onwards is like,
if you've searched something and you have to get to the second page, you didn't ask the right question.
Oh, here we go. 9.47% of people click results on the second page of Google. So 90% of people know that they're searching wrong. And 10% of people do not understand that they're searching
doubling
wrong.
down.
Yeah. They've asked the wrong question and they're ending up
you got to put some keywords or something, buddy.
I
That's
bet
like
that
going down
statistic
the dark
lines up with
alley
the
when you get
percentage of
lost.
Americans that have a gambling addiction problem. Because if you can't find it on the first page, then you are really pushing off there on the second page.
These are the same people
Let it
who like
ride.
get lost and then decide to go down the dark, scary alley to try to find their way back. It's like, no, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Those are the dangerous people.
Oh, you go to the second page? I don't want to mess with you.
There's a Venn diagram of crazy people and people who hit the second or third page, and it's basically a circle.
This is a really interesting other topic. I just want to really quickly, the statistic brings up a great point now. So you notice everyone remembers back in I'm going to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, when you'd go to Google and you'd search something and you had to rely on clicking on a link on a different website to actually get the information, right?
Wait, what are you talking about?
So if I went and Googled best restaurants in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
What would it pull up 8 years ago?
Oh, it would pull up the website. I see what you're saying, but now we have the actual information on the restaurant, and we don't have to go to the website. Yeah.
Right. So think about that from an advertising and a manipulation platform, that you now don't have to go look at someone's specific opinion on a different website. You're relying on Google to make that decision for you of what you think is good or not.
Yeah.
And so you're relying on Google to provide you. And then you have all the other little follow-up answers to different questions that you didn't even think of yet, but you're already asking those questions and it's already giving you answers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but if you ever go ask Google a question and then it gives you the similar questions, the next questions that you click on shapes the next questions going down.
Yep.
And so it just literally is a rabbit hole of different questions. You're right. And so you can literally go from what is my favorite Mexican food to border control down Google search. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, just literally asking questions. depending on which ones you pick. It's almost like a game to me because I love seeing how it
There
works.
are
But at the same
games
time,
around
it's
that. What was
terrifying.
that? Wasn't there a game like a long time ago? It was like a Wikipedia game where like you would try to end at like a certain
Oh, I
result.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I don't
just
remember
start
that.
on a. I remember this one. This one wasn't like it. Yeah. So basically, you start on a Wikipedia page, you and someone else, right? Or you could do it by yourself just for fun. But my wife and I used to do this sometimes, and we would start on the same Wikipedia page, and we would just pick a random topic. We would either like one of us would bring it up, or we'd use Google to. Yep, using Google again to just pick a random one for us, and we'd have to get from that Wikipedia page that we started on to the topic that we decided on in Wikipedia. And the only way we could do that is by clicking on the links within Wikipedia. So it's basically just like trying to map your way over to it by just finding information, like clicking on links to other Wikipedia pages that you think would lead you in the right direction. Like you could start on
So you would
bananas
start on
and you're
like
trying to get
Napoleon.
to yeah,
You'd
exact
start on
yeah.
like a Napoleon Wikipedia page and try to end up on a Wikipedia page about oranges.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you could do it. I don't think there was ever a game where we had actually failed to do it within like 15 minutes at
Yeah.
most.
You would just click on all the little links in the Wikipedia page that led to more Wikipedia articles.
Because like half of the words like in the article on a Wikipedia page are like already hyperlinked to another one. So it
Right.
wasn't super hard unless you get like backtracked. Unless you got to like backtrack because you hit like a dead end with like a niche
We should do
topic
that.
or
We should do
something.
like Napoleon to Batman. That would be great.
Okay.
I bet you could train AI to do like perfect that game.
Oh my
and
God,
do it
I
in
bet you
like the
could-
least amount of
yeah.
clicks.
Wow, dude, that would be an interesting little AI project just to train the AI to do that in like 5 clicks or less.
Does that game have like
Yeah.
an official name, or is it just like I don't think
I
I've
think
ever
it
heard the
did.
name.
I don't
I just
remember
saw
what it
it.
was called.
I saw a video. I saw somebody like explain. I heard somebody explain it on like a different podcast, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
But I don't think if they ever like came up with a name for it.
Are you
Yeah,
ready
I-
to guess? So we were talking about back 7-8 years ago, you had to click on everything. Now
Yeah.
Google provides an answer for you in almost all instances that you're going to go to Google for, unless it's something very specific, like Red or I searching for software development kind of things, or a very very specific niche kind of thing, or something about your job that you have to do, or some application. If it's general knowledge information, Google's going to have an answer for you. So my question to you guys: what percentage of Google searches result in a 0 click, meaning they find the information without actually having to go to a website?
Oh, I want to. Oh, that's got to be high. Oh man,
Like with
because
like staying within
in
Google.
Like you
that
go to
statistic-
Google and say, what are 5 animals from Africa? You don't need to click on anything because it's going to tell you.
Yeah,
right?
it's
like
gonna
at the
pull
very
it from
top.
an article.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
My guess is extremely high, like in the 90s, because that statistic would even be altered by like people just searching restaurants and stuff, like just basic simple searches.
That's
You
gotta
know,
So
be in the
right
90s.
now, it's 65%. Almost.
65. Man,
Yeah.
I am.
But here's
I'm
the
off.
thing, though. Here's the thing. This is what it says about a culture, though. How many people do you think actually click on the advertisements at the top of the page?
I don't think a
I would
whole
say
lot
not very many.
anymore.
Not
Not
very many.
anymore.
1.6%.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we all know now, right? Like it, like
Exactly.
you said, it's a culture shift.
Yep.
Like it's a generational.
It's education.
That's
It's
right.
education on how to use the search engine, and you know that those ads are there literally just to read and not to click on.
That's right.
Right? Even if it's for
Yep.
the same site. Like if I go and look up like Larry's Car Shop, right? And he's got an ad on Google, I know not to click on the ad for Larry's Car Shop. I know to go down and click on the homepage for Larry's Car Shop.
Yeah, right.
It's
It's
the
exactly
same,
right.
It's
Like
going
if
to
I
take you
look
the
up-
same place, but I'm
It's
not going to click on it.
AWS. Like
That's
I do
the
that with
millennials
AWS.
version.
I'll type in AWS and then I'll skip the ad for AWS and then just click on. one
Yeah,
below
exactly.
it.
That's like
Exactly.
the millennial parents version of like our parents going, "Don't talk to strangers on the internet."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Son,
Don't
don't
click on the
talk.
strange
Don't click
ads,
on the first.
Billy.
Don't ever click on the first link in Google.
Don't
It's
go
an
to the second
ad.
page. Don't click on the first link.
Now,
before you
here's
before you go on the internet, Billy, I gotta lay down some ground rules. Don't click on the first link. Don't go to the second page of a Google search.
the remaining is organic clicks. So that's people actually clicking on a link that they search for.
Yeah.
And that's 33%. So again, say that you don't remember, you know, what what link, you don't remember the name of a site, right? You don't remember the exact name of like www.eatmybreath.com. I
BillyBob.com.
don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you go Google it and then you get the name of the site and then you click on it from there, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, again, that 33% is. So
I want to say, for people who are searching like information, like how many animals in the world are there, and Google comes up with a result for you off the bat. I would take all of that with a grain of salt. And this again is about understanding perspective and not just letting the search engine decide things for you. Because you could search something important like how a chemical reaction is supposed to behave, and Google's result may not be right. You may
so
need to look at other perspectives first, or actual research documents, other than just what Google decided to show you.
I think a great example of this, Red, is reef tanks.
Reef tanks are such a good example. Every time I
Because
look
you
up a type
go
of
and
fish,
Google,
or yeah,
exactly. So here's a great example, right? If I go and say how to take care of an anemone, okay?
yeah,
And I Google how to take care of an anemone. Well, Google's going to give me an answer on that the water needs to be at this temperature, the salinity needs to be at this, the pH needs to be
certain
at
amount of
this,
gallons you
the
have to
amount of light
have.
you need, the amount of flow of the water you need,
Yep,
yep. So
the
all of
food
that
they
information,
eat,
right? But
if
then
they're
I'm going to go,
aggressive. Yeah,
but then I'm going to go to the next site that is being pushed heavily by advertising for me to click on. Well, guess what? That's the site that Google is referencing. But then I'm
yep,
going to go down to the next page, and that might be a very well known site. They're just not paying for advertising in the
yeah, where
community,
they have
right?
actual research,
They have
right?
actual research, right? And so then, but in that site, it's completely different information,
It
but
is
it's just not
completely
being
different.
said by Google because you're just reading the first thing that's off of Google. But then I'm going to go down to the fifth page, and it is literally nothing but scientific names for different types of anemones. And you're reading like 15 pages of test results and everything else from,
Right, and then
oceanologists and everything
that's
else.
different as
And
well.
exactly. And that never even made it to the top.
Yep.
Because here's something else to remember, especially if you're in a specialized field, that the entire news media and search engines base all of um their
Knowledge.
their language level on the
Yeah.
sixth grader.
That's right. I thought it was fifth grade. It was like a
Fifth,
fifth
fifth or
grade.
sixth grade.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
in that range.
yeah.
So they expect that everyone who's reading this should be able to read at a sixth grade level at least, and so that is their baseline, right?
Well,
So
and another thing is, all these news reporters and things, they're not in these specialized fields, and more often than not, they're wrong with what they're
right,
saying.
but even on the reef keeping thing, a lot of those people that put articles out, they're just trying to get people to go view their website to make money.
Or money,
Yep.
advertisements,
Yeah, it has
right?
nothing to
Yeah,
do with, actually knowing anything about it. Or they just put their opinion out there and it's a
yeah.
fact. This is back to just very basic
Opinion should not be fact.
verifying.
Yes.
Exactly. Do not take anything that you read on the internet or
If
hear
you
in the
if you
news.
if you read or hear "I feel" or uh "from my perspective," then those are opinions.
Right,
Those aren't
right,
facts.
but it doesn't matter. Anything on any website. If they say, for example, an anemone likes 85 degrees,
It's
guess
like,
what?
well,
It's
it
still
liked
an
it in
opinion
his
and you
tank.
still need to cross
Yeah.
verify.
Yeah,
You
you need
still
to
need to cross
cross
verify.
verify that,
Because it could
because
be completely wrong and you could kill
and
things
there's
in the
different
reef
types
community
of
and you could,
anemones.
and that's just one example.
Yeah, there's different types of anemones too, right? Like, somebody could say, "Oh, all anemones like 85 degrees because mine likes 85 degrees." Well, no,
That's
that's
exactly it.
not
That's
right.
that's exactly right. So
Yeah,
the point with all of this is verify, verify, verify.
that's
And
right.
what I usually do is I take 3 or 4 different sources and count up the
Yep.
highest number of what people say.
That's right.
Right?
I always, no matter what I find, I always check several sources.
Yep.
Even if the first result gives me the answer I'm looking for, I still double check.
Right. That's it. That's exactly right. So, anyway, I think it's now time to segment to Mr. Greg and what he has found out about significant data breaches. And so now we're going to more towards the
This
scary side of the
this is gonna
podcast.
be interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And so now that they have all of your information, what happens when someone who wants it
Somebody malicious comes in and says,
malicious
I want this information and I want to sell it on the dark web.
exactly. Greg, would you like to kick us off?
All right. So for those who you who don't know, a data breach is just when uh, a repository of like sensitive information or confidential information gets disclosed, accessed, or stolen by unauthorized individuals or entities. It can happen in different ways, like hacking, malware, phishing, or uh, more complicated methods like social engineering
Can we
or
let's
just
break down
physical
can we
theft.
break down each one of those? Social engineering, hacking, phishing, like the difference between those. Let's break those down. Those are very important topics to understand when we're talking about data breaches.
So we don't need to go into physical theft because that's pretty self-explanatory.
Well,
But
physical
social
theft is part of
engineering,
social engineering as well.
they
It
can they
is. It
I'm
is.
saying on its own. I'm
I'm
just
not.
going
Oh,
by
Can
each part. It
I,
doesn't not
I think we should explain each one though. I really
yeah.
I agree with Red. We should explain each one. So I'm going to start with the social engineering piece, and this is one of the
yes.
craziest things that I experienced. So when I worked at a former company, okay, we hired an outside team to try to break in so we could test our security, right? They couldn't break in from just the outside world and over the network, right? So we tested our social engineering capacity. Okay. Would you like to know how they got in?
Yeah. So explain social engineering before you tell us how they got in.
Okay. So social engineering is basically hacking people.
Right. Okay,
That's
so what does that
the
mean?
easy. What that means is that you are a trained social engineer, so you can convince people of things
Like
they're
that's like
usually very.
walking into a building with a ladder and pretending to be somebody important and they let you in just because you have a ladder.
I hate you so much because that was the exact example. They literally walked in with a ladder. They walked in with a hard hat, a vest on,
Yeah.
and a ladder. I mean, fuck you, man. Like, that's literally I was building it up to it. But yes, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And they walked right in with a ladder and a vest and a hard hat on. No one questioned anything. Didn't have any credentials. They just had all the
Oh,
right look and equipment. And security let them right through because they were like, "Yep, I got to go
no.
this way." Yep, they let them straight in.
Oh
Same thing
my
has happened
god.
at other places I've heard of.
Kevin
They
Mitnick
use
did this to Apple, I believe, multiple times.
really
Yeah, Kevin Mitnick got a hold of their badges and everything.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what people expect, right? And people are the most insecure part of security. They
It
just
is.
are because
People
people.
are our weakest point. When we talk
Yep,
about data breaches, people, the physical people are the weak spot. Not the
absolutely.
hardware, not the network. We've got stuff for network. We've got stuff for hardware. We have very little for people other than training.
Yep, training is how you do it. That's the only way. You because if you lock them down enough, they can't do their job,
And
right?
social
People can't do their
engineering
job.
touches on phishing as well. So phishing is like when I send let's say it's lunchtime. Everybody's super hungry. So I'm like, "Oh man, I want to get into this hospital's data. I know it's lunchtime over there. I know they're hungry. I'm going to make a Subway ad. I'm going to make it look just like Subway and I'm going to send them a coupon for a free sandwich." So
Yep.
I email everybody in the company a coupon for a free sandwich. And then it also takes just one person at this 10,000 person company, just one of them has to click the link and then I'm in.
Yeah,
I can then
assuming there's
hop
not really good
around.
antivirus, right? Assuming
Yeah,
there's not really good antivirus to detect the backdoor and
but
everything else.
but
But
even then, let's say there was a really good antivirus. Let's say they click on the link and then I say, "Oh, before you get your coupon, I need your username and password." You know how many people would click on that and do that? Can you guess?
probably,
I've done
yeah,
this.
probably.
I have actually done this at Bozeman Deaconess Hospital.
I was gonna
I had
bring that up. How you used to be part of.
80% success rate with stealing people's information when I first started with them. When I was done training them, they had uh like over 90% was able to avoid the link when I was done training them. But for when I first did it to them, 80% clicked on it and I could easily get into the hospital systems and steal their records.
That's so wild. And a lot of people that work in the business side of the world too, their VPN passwords are directly tied, you know, to their
Computer.
their computer. So, it's one thing to gain access internally, from a from a firewall perspective, but if you accidentally release out your account password to your email, more than likely that's tied to your VPN, and that gives the hacker direct access in without even having to try.
That without even having to try. I just
Yeah.
send an email with a Subway ad and you're done.
Yeah.
Your whole company's done.
Yep. That's
And
that's
all I
exactly
have
right.
to do, I can drop an encryption virus and encrypt all your data and hold it hostage. So you have to pay me to unlock your data. Or even worse, I could steal medical information and sell it to somebody on the dark web so that they can use that information to steal identities.
That's a great point. Well, I actually have a fact about that too. What was the last point, Greg? Though the last one.
Hacking and malware.
So
Hacking and malware gets into the encryption. You want to take that one, Rocket?
yeah, I'll take it. So, usually phishing is the first step, right? Phishing and social engineering.
Yeah.
Those are the first steps to get in. Once you're actually in, the hacking part, the quote unquote hacking part, is more of the. It could be a lot. I don't know. Hacking's kind of like it's hard to encompass
It's
everything into one.
hacking is finding loopholes in the physical infrastructure, right? So you're
Yeah,
talking
but if
about
you're
targeting
already
the
in, you're
people.
not quote unquote hacking, right?
Yeah.
Like
You're
that's the,
talking about targeting the people. You either target the people, or if you can't target the people, you resort to physically hacking and finding a loophole. Like what a
right.
loophole is like, let's say I install a piece of hardware to protect my network, right? And I say this hardware is going to keep people from getting in. But what I don't know is I bought some old piece of hardware, and in that old piece of hardware,
There's a
whoever
bug.
made it, yeah, forgot to implement something, and now the hacker is looking at it and he goes, "Oh, I know this hardware. I know they forgot to add this piece so I can get in through this
Yep,
piece."
that's
Right?
exactly
That's
right.
hacking.
Yeah. So that would be a backdoor, or that would be, there's also man in the middle attacks. There's honeypot attacks. Like
Oh
there's
yeah,
all
man in the
kinds.
middle. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cross site scripting, right? There's all kinds of different ways to get into things, and then there's even brute force attacks, right? Where if you don't,
Brute force is becoming less and less of an option as
right,
we implement more encryption, better encryption.
better encryption and just better timeout
Yeah,
policies,
better
right?
timeout, better
Yeah.
encryption,
Like if
stuff
you
like
try
that.
3 times, you're locked out. Well, you can't
Yeah.
brute force at that point, right? At
Nope,
least
you
not from
can't.
not from a user facing site. You can still
Not
probably
well.
do it against the
Here's
database, but
how: if I wanted to brute force a site that had a timeout for three attempts, um, first thing you would do, well, no, yeah, no, that would actually work pretty well. So I was thinking you would have probably a list of people, probably a list of emails of users who have access to the site. It probably wouldn't be one person, but you could try.
you
Uh,
could.
you could,
It would
and
be
this
more.
this
It would
goes
be
back
more.
to just slowing them down, right?
It'd be
You have
brute
the
forcing the
timeout,
user side of it and using the one password.
right? Yeah,
That's what it would be, and more than
yeah,
likely it'd be password 1 2 3 4 5 6
yeah.
exclamation. So
One of them would
one
have
of them
some sort of
one
weak
of them has set
password.
it to that. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. So, um, an interesting statistic on this, because I don't want to go too far down the weeds of like different hacking. That's for a whole separate conversation.
Yeah.
Before Greg starts going into the breaches, just to understand how much money is in this. The black market, the estimate from Norton Antivirus, the firm, is $200 billion annually is generated from user data on the black market.
Yep, that's just user data. We're not
That's
even
just user
talking
data.
about people will make and sell viruses, and like, when you click on something and it encrypts your computer. Well,
Yep,
somebody made that and sold it on the dark web. And the person
absolutely.
who's using it typically doesn't know how it was built. They just
Right.
know it works.
Yep, that's
And
exactly
that's
right.
also another market on the dark web. And
That
another
is.
thing on the dark web, most people don't even know. You can actually buy like assassins and things on the dark web. Like it gets really crazy.
It does. It does. It's terrifying. Most of the ones though, that if so, I'm just gonna let everyone know right now. Um, if you go to Google and Google how to buy an assassin on the dark web, I hate to tell you, but every single one of those is either run by the FBI or the CIA.
Yeah,
So
you're gonna end up
yeah,
on a list for
most of
sure.
the time you have to know the person to get to the site and then get the
Yeah.
login and everything
It's
else,
usually
and you have to know
private
how. Yeah,
information, yeah. And
yeah.
it's usually it's handled
But if you're
privately.
curious and you're not going to buy anything, it's not illegal to just browse the dark web. So if you
You
want to
will
do
end up
that,
on a list for
you'll
sure.
end up on a list. But and always use a VPN to protect yourself and
Use a
others that you
VPN,
love.
yeah.
But you download the Tor browser.
Make sure you
Tor.
use a VPN that does not log your activity.
Yes,
And if you want to be
absolutely.
even more paranoid, use a virtual machine as well with the VPN,
Uh,
just for like an extra layer of paranoia.
Do it in
well,
AWS. Launch a virtual machine in
yeah,
AWS,
okay.
run a VPN, and then
There
there
you
you
go.
go.
And then go to a library.
And then go to library.
Go to a cafe shop in a library.
Why are we telling people how to do this? This isn't okay.
What was that?
Okay. All right. Greg, do you want to get start talking
Yeah,
about?
Greg, can you please lead us into data breaches before we do
Okay.
something horrible?
So, like I said, I wasn't gonna get into any the international ones yet because there's a
No,
lot.
if you have like an international one that's interesting, just go deep into
Not this time. We'll do it.
We
We'll
want
say,
to hear
I'll say
all
it
of
for
this.
another time. But for
Okay.
now, I'm
Alright.
just gonna list like the top 3 U.S. data breaches that happened, and they all happened within the last decade. The biggest one. Can y'all guess what the biggest one would be?
I have
No.
no
In terms
idea.
of like the
Equifax.
type of in terms of
Oh,
Was
type
that
of
Equifax?
data, it's
about
going to
that
be
one.
Equifax. And I'll once I cover the other two, you'll see why. So Equifax back in 2017 suffered a significant data breach. If you don't know, Equifax is one of the 3 major credit bureaus in the U.S. used for credit checks and all that. You need to do a credit check if you want to do anything remotely substantial. Get a phone, get a loan, sometimes even get a rent an apartment. So this data breach that happened in 2017 affected 147 million people, and the data included in that breach included birth dates, social security numbers, addresses, previous addresses, and more.
Was any of this encrypted?
So the way that the hackers got it, was they arrested 4 members of China's military were charged in the hacking of Equifax, and they were able to hack it due to a vulnerability in the Apache Struts 1. It's like an open source web application framework.
That's
Oh,
what Rocky
Apache?
and I were just talking about with hacking. Is you have some sort of hardware or software you put in that's supposed to like block hackers, right? But it's like old or it has like a missing piece or
Oh,
something
and
like
you
that.
have no idea. You have no idea how many companies still have up not for the customer, for the employees. How
Yep.
while the customer facing site looks fantastic and new and everything else, because that's where all the money goes into, right? From the marketing teams and from everything else to make it shiny. Guess what? The employee side is old, unupdated, super
Yeah.
vulnerable,
'Cause they don't wanna
and
spend the money.
they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the
But
money
this
to
is
update
what
the employee site.
happens when you don't invest in your product.
Yep. That's exactly right. Anyway, sorry, Greg, continue.
So, no, that was good. So the numbers are all over the place in terms of how much it cost Equifax for this data breach. What we do know is that the U.S. government fined them $700 million for failure to implement adequate cybersecurity measures. And the amount of money it costs for like legal settlements and all that is up in the air, but it likely cost them over $1 billion in like fees and fines for
Yeah.
this data breach,
As it should.
because you can't get you can get a new social security number. It is just a pain to do that. You can't, it's not, you have to show like documentation that you are susceptible to malicious intent with your current security number, but getting a new one is just very difficult.
I think most people would just take the chance.
Most people will, because it's easier to do, or
Yeah, right.
they
and it's your
would.
social's tied to so much already.
Right,
It's
to
even if you
change
did
that, oh my
change it,
god,
it
you have
would
to
change your
basically go
life.
through. Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
basically go through and just go back to every single possible thing, and then imagine trying to prove it right?
Yeah.
Like once you change it, like how do you prove that your social changed? And also, I can't think of one company that I've worked at that had a policy on how to change a social security number.
Yep.
That is
And the
that is
other
an unchangeable field in every database that I have ever built.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It's like it's just it's you cannot change that. And then
Yeah,
on top of that, the government, just because you go to the US government and you change your social security number doesn't mean other parts of the US government are aware of that change. And when you go to
exactly.
try to do things, it becomes extremely difficult because they'll send you letters, "Oh, your social security number is wrong. We're detecting like malicious activity." It's like, "No, I changed it."
Yep. That's exactly right. That's
So
wild.
so the next one is this one happened back in 2013 and 2014 because it happened multiple times. This is Yahoo. Uh, they had a breach back then, and it exposed roughly 3 billion user accounts, which I think that's all of the users Yahoo had back at the time. So
Oh
all their
no.
users,
My 5
uh,
spam email accounts? Oh god.
Oh,
No.
no. No, a lot of
your
people
spam
legitimately
goes to
used
die.
Yahoo, so I don't know.
I used Yahoo back in the. That was my first
Yeah,
email.
everyone used Yahoo back in the day, so that was quite a lot. I don't know if they were still
Yeah.
relevant during that time period. I
The
can't
good thing
remember, but
about the good thing about Yahoo though was that it doesn't have any critical information on people. You could just go and
eh,
change your passwords everywhere to
yeah,
make
well,
sure.
but here's the problem. People don't change their passwords.
Yeah, and then that's when you
So,
start getting into problems about losing your social security number. If your password's been leaked, you need to change it because then that means they can log into your bank. If your bank is using the same password, they're gonna log into your bank. They're gonna log into everything that's using that same password and that
yep,
email.
that's
So
exactly right. I
change
just
it.
yeah, do not
Yeah.
have look my well, you know what? I'm going to save this for the very end because I've got tips and tricks on how to
Right. Yes,
stay
I'm sorry.
protected and keep your
I
data
should have
safe.
saved that for the very end as well.
That's
We
okay.
will get
That's
into the
okay.
tips and tricks on how to protect your data at the very end of this.
Yes.
So
Continue.
so with that Yahoo breach, they got emails, date of birth, passwords, all that stuff, right? Not as egregious or not as important data as what Equifax had, but still, that's a pretty big portion, especially with people's email addresses and passwords. And like you were saying, with passwords that have been compromised, having like somebody, because a lot, how many people, I'd like to know the statistics on how many people use the same password for each of their
Oh,
logins
so
and stuff
much.
like that, or even just
So
like
many people.
variations of
I
the
bet it's
same
almost
password with
everybody.
like a one at the end or an
I
exclamation
bet it.
point if they're
Yeah,
feeling
I would bet
nasty.
it's almost everybody.
Right. Because here's the yeah, anyway. Yeah, it's a lot because I mean not everyone can remember every password, and especially when you get into like random passwords and things like that. That's really great if you have your password manager synced up to every
Yep.
device, then you're always going to like know where to
Let's
find it. But if you
Rocket. Let's
don't,
keep this. Let's keep this for the end because we can
yeah,
discuss
I know,
password managers and things like that.
I know. I'm sorry. Okay,
That's interesting too, because I also want to hear y'all's take on those like third-party password manager services,
Yeah,
having all your
we'll
passwords
get
in
into
one
that.
spot.
We will get into that. Yeah.
So for Yahoo, it looked like it was an attack from Russia. It had like two Russian agents were charged in the attack. Igor Anatolievic and Dmitry Alexandrovich were
Can we
part of it, and they carried out those attacks between 2013 and 2014. This happened. I want to say like three separate incidences
do
during those
so
time periods.
one reason why these a lot of attacks like this do come from Russia is Russia protects these people, these hackers and stuff. Like there's no
yeah, because
laws.
they're valuable.
Yeah, there's no
Again,
laws in
yeah,
Russia that says you can't be a hacker. You know what I mean? Like Russia loves these people, and that's why they're all going to Russia, right? It's a dangerous situation when you have an entire country harboring these extremely dangerous people.
So Yahoo ended up having to pay $35 million to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissions for failing to disclose the breach in a timely manner to investors because apparently they knew that there was a breach. They just were downplaying it. And then they also agreed to pay $117 million to settle a class action lawsuit related to the breach.
I just don't understand. Like that's all great and fine that they pay a whole bunch of money to the government and whatever else, but like, where's the people's compensation? Like your data was
That's the
exposed
class.
by a
Well, that's the
company.
That was the
class
class
action
action
lawsuit.
lawsuit, the $117.5 million.
Okay, so 117.5 million, and how many accounts were hacked?
I don't know who
3
it went to
billion?
exactly, but it's
3
3 billion users.
Oh, 3 billion users.
Individual
Okay.
users. So that's could be
Okay.
like
Well,
multiple people.
but that's
multiple,
accounts though, because not 3 billion users had Yahoo accounts. So
Yeah.
But even I'm just gonna pull up a quick calculator here. So 3 billion. Say that it was 3 billion, and you take 117. Or sorry, nope. We got to do this the other way because it's even worse.
What was that back in
117.
2014? Half the world's population
Yeah.
using Yahoo?
Yeah.
Half
I
the
don't
world
think-
was
I don't
using
think that's
Yahoo
accurate.
email.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Again, my 5 spam accounts. But again, if you got one tally for every spam account that you had, then I
Yeah,
guess
that's a good point. Yeah.
And then all the
You could
spam
really
accounts
only
that have
have
been
like
forgotten over the years. I probably have like a dozen of them that I just don't remember the passwords.
So the class action lawsuit. Do you want to know if all 3 billion users signed up? Do you want to know how much compensation we would all get
A
for our
few
Yahoo
pennies.
emails?
like pennies.
4 cents.
Yeah,
4 cents.
pennies.
So that's how
But-
much my data is worth.
More
to Yahoo, 4
accurately, it would
cents.
probably be somewhere around 500 million. You know what I mean? That would be like the entirety of South America or North America. Sorry.
You say like 500 million users.
Yeah, that would be the entirety of North America.
Okay, so you get like 20 cents
Yeah.
for your data being exposed to hackers. I'm just, you know what I mean? Like it's really but I don't know. It sucks.
It's wrong. It's wrong. You know what
It's
I mean?
wrong,
and this
but at
is
the
why we're
same time,
pushing for these laws
you're
currently.
giving them your data.
That's part of the laws we're pushing for currently, though. We're trying to hold these people accountable when they
But-
hold our data like this.
Okay, I understand, but you're also signing up for it yourself willingly, right?
Of course.
It's
what
just
what
like
choice do we have in this modern
it's like
era?
I'm going. Well, I understand. You always have a choice in one way or the other, though, right? It
You
sucks
do.
not doing it, right? But
It
it's like
doesn't
like
just
buying
suck.
a car, right? It's
You
like
have
you live in the
hindered
middle of
yourself.
nowhere
It's like
and I need
chopping
a
off
car.
limb. You know what I mean?
I
It's like-
wouldn't say it's quite that bad, but
It is.
It's
You are hindering
no, it's like
yourself
it's
from
like walking.
communicate-
It's like walking to work versus driving to work. That's about
again.
what
That's
it
like
is.
chopping off a limb. It's like
Yeah, it's not the
in
same.
Texas. In Texas, that's really difficult.
I
what I
understand
mean?
it's really difficult. It's very difficult,
It
but
would take me if I were to walk. I work from home now.
how many
but if
how
I
many
were to
people
work-
die in car crashes every year?
Oh, a lot. Oh
right?
my god.
Do you sue the car manufacturer for not protecting you in a crash?
That's a good point. That's a valid point.
Right? No,
Yeah,
you don't.
have to learn how to protect yourself.
So here's
Yeah.
an
But-
interesting
but
thing that
here's
I
the
think
problem. You're
LifeLock
making
has
the
come up
point that the
with.
person was the problem during the car crash. What if the problem was the car that caused the car crash, right? My data was leaked because of the company. My car crashed because the company made the car wrong.
Well,
You
if it
understand?
was
Then
truly
you
the
do
if
sue
it was
the car company.
if there's enough incidents, yes,
Yeah,
you can
there's got to be a
yeah.
bigger sample
There's-
size.
there's
of
gotta-
There
incidences
would be
of, like-
enough incidents. We're comparing an entire data breach, which would be
That's a
every
good point.
person
That's a good
versus
point.
every car, right?
That's a good point.
yeah.
I do agree with that. But I think my point back to the car thing, though, separately was LifeLock, right? Has taken the same approach, right? Your personal data, if you lose money from someone stealing your data, then LifeLock is there to insure it, right? And also try to help keep it safe.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
they're taking the same approach as insurance companies, right? When you get into a car accident. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Funny enough, with that Yahoo data breach, they actually got it using a spear phishing attack by sending phishing emails to Yahoo employees that appeared to be from a trusted source, but had fishy links in there to let them get in.
yep.
So
That's the
that's how
easiest way to
they,
do it.
that's how
It's
they got
the
it.
easiest way to do it.
That's
probably
the
why they
easiest
took so long
way
to-
do it.
That's why it took them so long to like disclose how it happened.
But
Yeah.
here's
An
the
employee.
other thing too, right? So you have to think with a hacking campaign. when someone comes and you hire a company to come try to, they're called pen tests. You hire a
Penetration
company,
testing.
yeah,
Right?
you hire
Penetrating
someone to come
our
penetration
infrastructure.
test a
Yeah.
company. They usually have a timeline of 1 to 2 weeks, right, to try to
Yeah.
get in, and that's about how long you give them. Hackers, they don't have a timeline.
They don't.
So
They
you have to
don't.
understand, you have to be under the assumption that, especially if you're a business owner or you work in IT, that your company is being attacked every single day. Every
Yeah.
hour of every
Being
day, someone
watched
is
at the
trying to
very
get in.
least.
Or
Yeah.
being watched, but more than likely being attacked every single day.
Yep.
And it's up to
Targeted.
you to make sure
Yeah.
that your defenses are there.
Yeah. And the number one thing you can do is make sure your systems are. Oh no, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk. Damn it. I want to talk about it so bad.
I know.
I'm almost done. I'm
It's
almost
such
done.
an interesting
Okay.
topic. We're gonna get
Hurry
to
the
it. Let's
fuck
let
up, Greg. I'm ready
Yeah,
to talk about
Greg, hurry
security
up.
and stuff.
Y'all are the ones talking.
All right, Greg, give it
The
to us.
last
give
one
it to
was
us.
the Marriott International data breach from 2018. Marriott is a hotel chain, and they got their guest reservation database got hacked from one of
They
their
stole my sheet
hotel
preference.
chains, the Starwood hotel chain, and it looks like they had gained access to it before Marriott. They had been it was like 4 years before it was even discovered
Whoa.
that they had access to all this information. And the
That's
hotel,
what I'm
How?
you've
saying.
got credit
That's what I'm
card
saying.
information, driver's license numbers, passport numbers.
Wow.
Because it's international. Like they
Yeah.
got a hold of a lot of data, and for a while.
Wow. So nobody was monitoring their network or their software or their databases or anything.
Yeah, but you gotta think, like, and you know this, Red, like if you go and download something, like, or you export a database out, who's actually checking the database logs?
It's not the logs. Like who? Oh man.
But who's
yeah.
checking the traffic? Like if you're
No,
drip feeding it,
Here's the thing.
who's checking?
I wrote a monitoring software for a company, and essentially it was Python, and it would just all it would do is it would see if there was a large amount of network activity on a server, it would send you a Slack message of all the people who were logged in.
But what if it
and how
wasn't a
much
large
data was
amount of network
transferred.
activity?
Then-
What if they're doing it
in
500
they would have to do
kilobits
it like
at a time?
one record at a time.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but even if it was more, they say it was 10 records, right? I mean, that's still bytes.
That's
not
still
a
bytes.
large
Yeah,
network
yeah. That's
event,
still
right?
the-
And so,
But-
again, this is back to my point. They don't have a timeline. They could
Yeah.
literally just keep drip feeding records for a year.
That's
and
right.
no one
They
would know.
could. That's a good point.
And
Yeah.
eventually, and here's the other problem, and this is a big problem for a lot of, if you don't have monitoring solution in place, you're just relying on something bad to happen in your reactive IT department. If you don't have a constant logger watching all of the connections to your databases, to your APIs, to everything else that is supposed to be secure, you're going to go into a log, something happens, and you're going to go into a log, and you're going to scroll up and see all these IP addresses that are connecting to things, right?
Yep.
But your logs only go back so far that are stored on the system. And if you're not paying attention, that could be your actual hacking source, but you're going to go back and see, well, this has been going on for a year. So this has to be something that we built. This isn't sudden.
One thing
And
they
that's-
could have
that's
done
the
to
problem.
prevent this was they could have just simply locked down their network so that only you can only access like the databases and things within their network. You know what I mean?
Potentially, but if they need, but here's the big problem with that is like third-party vendors
Yeah.
and being able to access
That's
that data,
yeah,
and
that's a good point.
you know,
But then that's
like
what
that's
APIs
the
are
biggest
for.
risk.
That's
But
what
yeah,
APIs are for.
agreed. But look at the Truth Social download, right? Their API
Yeah.
was completely wide open, and they thought all these users thought their information was so secure. I'm sorry, it's just so funny because it's Truth Social, but
Yeah.
or no, it wasn't Truth Social. That's the new one. What was the one before that? Right at
Twitter
the
with a
end
P.
yeah. What was it? No, it wasn't.
What was
Oh my
it?
god, what was it?
I don't
Oh
know.
my god, that's driving me crazy. What was it? Not Patreon.
No, but I keep thinking of Patreon, but I know that's not it. What was it called? It was something. Man, none of us can remember it. It didn't last for.
Parlor.
Parlor.
It was Parler.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. And basically one data engineer like found the API and downloaded the entirety of Parler and gave it to the FBI.
Wow.
The entirety of Parler.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So all the personal messages, all the posts, everything else, just found the open API and was able to grab
That's
all
why
of
your
it.
API shouldn't be open. You know,
Exactly.
It takes a few extra steps to make sure you have some sort
even
of
just
authentication with your API.
even just a simple
Token,
secret,
like a token
yeah,
that
token and
expires every like
secret.
hour or two. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I
Even
mean
would do the
that's
trick.
even that, but I mean even if you just have a simple key phrase that you have to enter in to get into it, right?
Something.
Yeah, just something.
Did Kanye ever end up buying Parler? I never followed that.
I don't know.
Kanye wanted to buy it for a little bit.
I'm sure he wants to buy a lot of things right now. I don't even know how his bank account's
doing. If Kanye
doing.
wants to come on here and discuss data breaches, then we can ask him.
Is he going to be wrapped in like a tinfoil mask or something this time?
What?
On an audio podcast, sure.
Yeah.
No.
You won't be able to hear him though.
Oh, well. He's too much tinfoil.
Wait, is that a bad thing? Whoops.
Oh.
All right. So, what are some of the ways that we can be protecting our data? Obviously, keep not using the same password for every login.
Password vaults are fine. I think password vaults are great. What
Really?
you should do is you should have.
Yeah, they are. They
vault.
are.
And you should let the password vault come up with the passwords for you, right? And just every few months or so, change your main password for your password vault.
Let me pause that though. Your password vault should require MFA.
Yeah, it should.
MFA,
absolutely.
MFA,
multi-factor authentication, which is like you get a message on your phone.
MFA is better than any password. It's better than any single password. I don't care if your password is literally the encyclopedia. It is better than that. Because what MFA requires is for you to physically pull out your phone, in most cases, pull out your phone. Hopefully you don't just have it set as email, because if they've broken into your email, guess what? You're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
But it should be tied to your phone into either a 6-digit authentication app or a push notification authentication app, or even just a text message. That is literally the best defense that you can have.
It is. It is
not to say that none of those can be hacked, especially the text message, that it can still be hacked. But the amount of effort that someone would have to go through to target you specifically to do that,
they're not going to target you specifically. And most of the people who do this, remember, are buying this information off of the dark web, and they're not hackers necessarily themselves. They're just buying. Somebody already hacked this information and sold it on the dark web. Then some person somewhere bought that information off the dark web and is now trying to log into your account and they're doing it en masse. And I just want to figure out. They're not going to know how to hack an MFA. Most of them won't.
They're not going to spend much time on you, right? If you're not a business, you're going to get more time. Just anyone who owns a business or protects a business for their job,
they're obviously going to be targeted way longer. But an individual, they're going to give up almost immediately. They're going to move on. They have thousands of people they have to work with. They're not going to stick with you for more than like a few
or sometimes
minutes.
Hundreds of thousands. They're going off of some long list, like Red said. They're going off of some really long list, and they're just going through, trying passwords, username, password. And usually it's automated. Sometimes it's a sweatshop doing it. Like that's just how it works.
Most of the time, surprisingly, it's a sweatshop. And you would think, because it's actually really easy to automate something like that. But most of the time, it's just some sweatshop. Yeah.
Yep. They're just going down a list that is provided to them, getting paid pennies on the dollar, just trying to break in. And then once they break in, they know how to change a password. They go and change your password, and then guess what?
And if they get something, they get a bonus, right? Most of the money goes to their boss, but they get a little bonus if they get something.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep. So use MFA, use a password manager that requires MFA. That's number one. That is the most important thing. Less importantly, but also still very important, keep your apps up to date.
Everything up to date. Now, and
keep
this goes
everything
to businesses
up to date.
Too. Imagine if what was it, Equifax? Equifax had that Apache server, right? Is that what you said?
If they had updated Apache and patched it.
It would have never happened. All they had to do was run updates. That's it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I know that everyone hates updates, from the systems administrators to the developers, right? Like if you're designing internal apps, If you're
Yeah,
designing internal apps and you've got to update repositories and you've got to update libraries and things like that, do the updates.
it's maintenance.
It's
Anything
just maintenance. You
worthwhile.
build something, and this is very important for
Yeah,
people who aren't involved in software development. Guess what? When you build an app, there is no there's no finished with it.
there
You're
is no.
constantly having to update it.
Yep.
So every time that you
Anything
build an
anything
app, you
worthwhile
have to
requires
remember
a
that you
commitment.
have to update it
Yep.
every time that there's an update that needs to be pushed across, right? Not just bugs, just anytime a library needs updating, you need to make sure you update it
You
because half
update
the time it's security
everything.
related.
Yep, that's right. More than half. More than
Yep,
half the time, any updates that are released are security patches,
that's exactly right.
vulnerabilities that were discovered.
Yep. So in addition to that, use a VPN if you really need. Use a VPN if you really need to access something sensitive. I'd say. For most of the time, though, as long as your passwords are protected and you're using MFA, I'm not really too worried about the VPN. Um, Same thing with public Wi-Fi. If you really need to access something sensitive, don't use public Wi-Fi. Use cellular, in my opinion, over public Wi-Fi. If you have a hotspot on your phone, I would use that. But
Yeah, public Wi-Fi is a big no-no. A lot of people can be targeted via public Wi-Fi.
especially at airports.
Especially at airports, at McDonald's. Like, for example, if I wanted to, I could walk into an airport and I can pretend to be, like airport Wi-Fi. Like let's say you want to connect to airport Wi-Fi. It's called airport Wi-Fi. You say, okay, I'm connecting to airport Wi-Fi. I'm pretending to be airport Wi-Fi. Now you've connected to my router, right? My network, and you don't even know it. And now I have access to everything.
yeah,
It's that
that's exactly
simple.
right.
You know what
That's
I mean?
exactly right.
You have to be careful with these public connections. You use your hotspot when available. If you have to use a public connection, do it, but make sure that you're actually getting like internet from the public connection, and make sure it's secure. Like, don't just and most of these public connections will have like some sort of approval site too. Like you have to accept some terms of service or something like that. If you don't see
Right.
that, it's probably not a good connection.
Yep. That's exactly right. Um, the next item on the list: stop putting everything online. For the love of God,
What do you
no
mean by
one.
that? What do you
Stop
mean?
putting your birthday. Stop putting your address.
Right.
Stop putting your middle name. Stop putting all of that online because
Yeah.
guess what?
That's social engineering right there.
That's
Now I
social
can
engineering.
find you, I can identify you, I can track you so
Yeah,
easily.
and it's not just social media because guess what? Every time that you put in everything about you on a different website that you may not know, but they're asking for it, guess what? Now they have it. And even if they are legitimate, if they get hacked, that's another way that someone knows or some bad person knows you are you.
Yep, that's right.
So be very careful about releasing that kind of information.
Yeah. Most of the
Also,
time,
I'm just gonna throw this out here as a financial advice.
yeah.
Use a credit card, not a debit card.
Yes, I agree. Use a credit card, not a debit card on the internet. Debit cards, you have to change your whole bank and everything. With a credit card, you call the credit card company, they cancel the card, they revoke the transaction, and then they send you a new card.
Yep.
If your debit card is compromised, you need a new bank.
Yep.
Like they're gonna close that bank account, transfer the funds, open a new bank account. Like it's a complicated process.
Yeah. If they get your bank account and routing number, which they can with your debit card. So
Yep.
just word to the wise for there. The other things, just to quickly touch on, check your privacy settings. Make sure that again, I don't recommend it. Doesn't solve for data breaches, but it does prevent the average nosy person or all the way up to a dumb hacker from gaining more personal information about you. Don't share your personal information with the
Don't.
entire world. Share it with your
Yeah.
friends if you want to, or be like me and just not have social media because
Yeah. Well, I have social media, but I
yeah,
I I I would also just for phishing. I want to go into phishing because that is like the number one way to get into people's systems, right?
yeah,
And social engineering. If you get a call, right, and you're not expecting a call, don't answer. If it's important, they'll leave a voicemail, okay? And then for phishing emails, don't don't click on any emails unless you're expecting an email. I don't care if it's from Amazon. I don't care if it's from the government. Unless you're expecting an email, don't click on it, you know? And if let's say you see an Amazon email and it looks super legit and it's saying like your account is like being closed or something, and you're like, and you are a little worried, just log into Amazon. Don't click the email, log into Amazon. If your Amazon doesn't have a message or anything like that, you're probably fine. Like,
That
don't
that's completely right.
yeah, just do your due diligence. Don't be clicking on email links unless it's from somebody you're expecting. You're expecting an email, you're expecting the link. Like, even if your friend sends you an email with a link, that means his email could be compromised. Somebody could be logging in as him and sending you a link to try to get your information as well. So,
That's right.
unless you're expecting that email from your friend, don't click on it.
Or even on social media. I had a neighbor back when I at a previous place I lived in. My neighbor's on Facebook, and he added me or I added him, and like I moved, and then like 6 months, 9 months later, I get a message from him on Facebook Messenger, and he's telling me about this like hey Greg, long time no chat, and I was like, oh, that seems legit. Like, oh, he's actually like trying to call, like, reach out, and it was like it was very like the chat was kind of a little like stilted a bit because it was like on text it's like kind of sounds like him, but I don't see him. Mind you, this dude was like 80 years old, so
Yeah.
I didn't. It was already I was already raising red flags with me about like him like directly messaging me, and then he started
Right.
messaging me about this like new program for people who are thinking about getting houses and how you can get like a $20,000 grant, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Don't click on any
I'm like,
links.
this is
Yeah.
just within Facebook Messenger. I'm sitting here like trying to. This is like a little bit of phishing slash social engineering,
Yeah. It's both.
a
Yeah.
combination of both, which I
Yep.
think most data
Phishing
breaches
is
need
technically
most
a,
like
a version of social engineering. So
yeah.
yeah.
I my grandmother, my deceased grandmother, is still inviting people to be friends with her on Facebook.
Wow, that's impressive. How did she
Yeah.
do that?
I know, dude. All this time we thought there was no connection to the other side. Turns out it's just fucking Facebook, man.
It's Facebook. Facebook's everything.
All people's accounts are probably the easiest to hack, but then they're
They are,
also the
because
most
it's all
susceptible to be like discovered because it's like, dude, like if you even just a
I mean,
cursory glance at their post history, you can see that they died 2 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, but
You're
they're
telling me
targeted,
grandma
right?
came
They're
back from the
targeted.
grave to offer me an exciting deal on this new government program?
Elderly people are targeted for a very good reason. It's because they're not as inept. Is that the right word? Inept with technology as we
No, they
are.
are inept.
They
Yeah,
are
they
inept.
are inept at
They are
technology.
Yeah.
inept with technology, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
why
they're
they're
like the
targeted.
easiest to hack, but
Yeah.
they're also the least like they're most likely to get like found out by people who know them. It's like, we know grandma. We know she's not using Messenger like that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's not usually targeting family members. It's usually just people on the friends list in general, which
Right.
could include family members. I mean, he was messaging me,
Right.
but I wasn't buying it. I was like, I know so and so, and I know they wouldn't be talking to me about this kind of stuff, especially because they're very libertarian. So
Oh
them
yeah.
getting all excited about free
Those are the
government money
best.
right here,
Those are the best when you
yeah,
get
that
like
ain't gonna
someone who's
happen.
like super hardcore one way, and then like they're all of a sudden like, did you see the Second Amendment hearing that I recently went to? And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I could have sworn yesterday you were like on the verge of communism, man. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
what also put this one as a red flag was the fact that he was in the hospital at the time too. It's like, you're
Oh
telling me
yeah.
that so and so from the
Taking his
ICU is
time at the
trying
hospital
to.
to tell you about these mortgage programs. How kind.
This was an exaggerated example of it too, because it was like, I know this guy. First off, he ain't going to be messaging. It's not going to be him messaging me on Facebook. It's going to be his wife because she's the one that uses the Facebook the most. Second of
Right.
all, I know he's not going to be asking me about government stuff because he hates the government. And then three, he ain't going to message me at all because he's in the ICU.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
coincidentally at the same time.
But that just goes back to don't click on any links or anything unless you're expecting it from somebody, right? Unless that person is called you and been like, "Hey, I'm going to send you something," you know?
Yeah, no, that's completely right. That's completely
But even
right.
if that person has called you and said, "I'm going to send you something," it better be somebody you know. You know?
Right. No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Um, the only other one that I think I can think of is, in addition to just generally being careful, be careful on the shopping sites more than anything. On
Yeah.
shopping sites that you don't know, that's where everyone gives away their
Yep.
financial
They
information.
give their
But
financial
with that,
information
they
away.
also give away their address, right? Because you
Yep.
want to buy something, you want to get it shipped. Just be mindful that if you're buying on a less than reputable shopping site, or a what you think is like a local shopping site, just be careful, because it it is so easy for someone to capture that data. They're already
Yeah.
capturing it. They're capturing it on purpose. So if like, you know what I mean, like, you're submitting a form with your data on it and it goes into their database. Like, that is what
Yeah.
you're doing. So just be mindful that you're giving away information.
In most cases, actually, I think in today's internet market, most of those transactions happen through a third-party application that like manages the purchasing and like credit card transactions and all that stuff. Like
Right.
most of the time, the business isn't storing your credit card information. It's a third-party company that they've paid to handle the credit card transactions. And if you don't know anything about that third party that's handling that credit card transaction, I don't know if I would consider it safe at all.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So it's not just safe enough just to use a burner email for these types of websites. You also need to use like a burner credit card if you're
Just use a
banking
credit
institute.
card, period.
Yeah,
Because
just use
all
a credit
credit
card.
cards are burner credit cards, right? You just call your credit card company. I have like an illegal transaction. As soon as you can, you call them like right away, and then they'll block the transaction, refund you, whatever, and send you a new credit card, right? So just use a credit card.
Yeah. Out of all the information we've learned today, use a credit card.
If your credit's not good, go get a secured card. It's worth it. You still have like the $500. You still have it. You know what I mean? You still have access to it. It's not like you're losing $500. You know, just go get a secured card. I promise you, it's much better than using your debit card.
Yeah. Nope. Completely agree. Okay, guys. Well, I think it's time for us to end this one. Did everyone have fun?
Yeah, this has been a really interesting discussion. I'm glad we got to talk about this and how people can secure their data and stuff like that. It's really important to share this kind of information.
I like how we learned that it's not just us as individuals who are making silly mistakes, but also big billion-dollar corporations as well.
Yeah, it's more big billion-dollar corporations than anything that we've got to look out for because they have the most, sensitive information. So
Right.
I'm
Right.
glad we talked
And
about
it's
it.
not just healthcare.
Yeah,
I mean, how valuable is your social, and how valuable is your address tied to your name, tied to your birth date, right?
right.
To
Yep,
people who want to impersonate you.
that's absolutely right.
So,
Yep.
okay, guys. Well, this has been fun. So, I'll
See
talk
you
to you
guys
later.
next week. Yeah,
All right. See ya.
bye.
All right. See ya.
For more information regarding Curly Brace Podcast and the host, check out curlybracepodcast.com and follow us on social media. To never miss an episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.